Linda.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Thank you for being so patient as we took a hiatus for a few weeks. I've had a challenging few weeks. Sadly, my dad passed away and I had to take a pause. And I thought I'd be back in a few weeks and I just wasn't ready. So I asked Debbie Heiser from the Mentor Project, who is our host, and I said, Debbie, I need a little bit more time. And she said, don't worry, we'll hold your spot for you. And I said, do you think everyone will come back? They came back. Our high achievers came back. And I am so excited because what I've been through in the last 3 weeks, these people really helped me get through it, as well as many, many other people. And it's really about a mindset. And I learned a lot from them. And I used that as I was going through the last few weeks. So a lot of people know that I study high achievers. Oh, I should tell everyone, my name is Dr. Ruth Gotian, and I study elite high achievers. I always forget that. So I've interviewed Nobel laureates and astronauts and Olympians. And, today, the names of the people.
How embarrassing.
And the people who were elected to the National Academy of Medicine, those names came out. And I'm, scrolling the list very quickly to see who I know from that list and who I've studied. Anyway, the point is with these elite high achievers, they get bumps in the road just like the rest of us. Their bumps are not smaller, their bumps are not larger. They have the hurdles and they have the challenges and they have the bumps in the road. But the way they deal with these challenges is actually a little bit different than how some of the rest of us do it. And I actually decided to take a lesson from these elite high achievers about how they handle these challenges. And I was going to use that as I was trying to deal with the grief of losing my dad. So elite high achievers, they have challenges. But what they focus on, it's not a question of if they'll get through it, because they know that they will. The question is how and when. And that's what they really put all of their focus on. So what they actually do is they control what they can control. Control what you can control. So I decided to take that lesson from the high achievers. As I was going through the grief, I could not control the grief. It was what it was. But I can control the ordering of a headstone, for example. And I did a whole PhD on what kind of marble you need for this kind of environment and what was going to be on it and who was going to come and all of that, because that's all I could control. That was it. So that's what I focused on. So those are some of the lessons that I have learned. And I am so thankful that our high achievers have come back, and we have such a great group today. We have high achievers that have really had some bumps in the road, and they have really come through the other side. They have just made it their life's work. And I also think we're going to laugh a lot today because we have one of the funniest people I have ever met on here as well. So here is what we're going to do, because I really want to focus on how high achievers deal with challenges, deal with those bumps and bruises, deal with control what you can control. So I just want the audience to know what it is that you are known for. So if I were to Google you, what's that one sentence? So just tell us what your name is, and if I Google you, what would come up, what you're known for. You ready? All right, in the way that you come up on my screen, Dr. Susan Bernstone.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back, Ruth. And as you know,
thank you.
Your loss, but you got through it. You're going to be continuing to get through it. So we're all here. And one of the things that, well, I'm not going to talk yet. So I'll save my.
Just tell us what you're known for.
I'm known for two things. I was thinking when you Google me, you see two things right now. One is therapy and working with people, and the other is I'm a television talk show host, and I get people to talk about their stories. So that's what I do. That's what I'm known for, both a therapist as well as a television talk show host.
Love it. Thank you. Liana.
Welcome back. It's so good to see you.
It is so good to be back with everyone.
It's so good to see you. So I'm Liana Shauli. I am the style sage, and I am known for providing transformation through the empowerment of language, action, and wardrobe.
And she's the reason that we wear color. And we got our plants. You like my plants, Liana?
That's yeah, because you guys are all like, look, Bruce got a whole new background. Wow.
Janice, tell us who you are, and if I were to Google you, what would come up?
Well, welcome back, Ruth, and glad to finally see you in person or through Zoom. I'm Janice Lenz, and I'm known for hearing accessibility, like behind what you see behind me on the New York City taxis, the induction loops in the taxis. That's my work. But I'm also known for traveling the world on credit card points.
Nice. Dr. Kelly.
Hello, my name is Kelly Corrick, and if you Google me, what would probably come up is the sun. So I'm an astrophysicist that studies the sun.
Nice.
And hence Monica. She has the Aurora Borealis in the background. Oh my God, it's gorgeous.
Monica, tell everyone who you are, and if I were to Google you, what would come up?
I am a strategist, and my TED Talk was dubbed the Third Revolution in Humanitarian Aid.
Love it. The funniest lady on television, Susan.
Well, not to feel pressure or anything, my name is Susan Silver, and I was one of the first female sitcom writers on Mary Tyler Moore, Bob Newhart, Maude, and I've recently written my memoir, Hot Pants in Hollywood, Sex, Secrets, and Sitcoms, and I don't have hot pants on now, I promise.
And that's the book right behind her. There it is. Susie, thank you for joining us. We are doing introductions. If you could tell us who you are, and if I were to Google you, what would I find?
Photographer, educator. My nonprofit is called Photo Wings, and that would probably come up soonest.
Well, thank you. And finally, Dr. Bruce Wiley.
Welcome back, Ruth.
Thank you.
Well, there's a big difference if you Google Bruce Wiley versus Bruce Lee. So if it's Bruce Wiley, then it's I'm a journalist, writer, cover health and healthcare and medicine for Forbes. I'm also professor and a systems modeler.
That's a big one-liner in Google. Thank you. So I think I got everyone, right?
Everybody's called Susan, so just say Susan, we'll all talk at the same time.
Just say Susan, and you know, Bruce is here, so I don't feel like the only non-blonde in the room. Oh, and Kelly.
Not blonde.
Oh, Monica, you got auburn. All right, Kelly, because I know that you have a hard stop, and I think that your story of overcoming challenges is still very fresh in your mind. And I'm hoping that you can share as much as you're comfortable with as to what the challenge was. Now, remember, we're recorded. We are on Facebook. This is going on YouTube. Share what you're comfortable with, but then share what I was really inspired with, how you overcame that challenge.
Definitely. So the challenge that I have been facing or had been facing for about the first 20 years of my career is just kind of overwhelming burnout. Being a woman in science, being normally in a room full of 80 people, I'd probably be one woman, maybe two women in the room. And so, you know, I worked hard and thought that this was great. And I was just going to make it anyway because I was smart enough and I worked hard enough and I learned how to do it like everyone else has done it. And you get to a point and you just can't do that anymore. There's an amount that you can't give anymore. So was definitely suffering from burnout earlier this year, and COVID kind of put it over the top. You put one more stressor on and the stress, you know, just couldn't process. So what I did is I took time off. I talked to, I have a coach, a regular coach that I work with for a career, but also had doctor consulted with a psychologist and said, what do I need to do? Like, how do I fix this? And they're like, first of all, stop trying to fix things because that's part of what got you here is trying to fix everything. And you really need to just take time off. You need to take 2 months and you need to go sit by a lake and you need to not do anything. And I was very puzzled with this not do anything. It's just not something that I'm used to. So I went and I read, and I went to a location where there was very little cell service. So I had to walk in the woods and I had to read physical books, and really allowed my mind and write. So I was allowed to just kind of let my mind be, and actually listen to the point got to the point where I was able to listen to the wind in the trees. That was the only sound that I was listening to, and it was glorious. Um, and so it was great in terms of taking some time off and really thinking about what was important, and took a couple weeks and allowed myself to do absolutely nothing. And then, started exercising, started making sure hydration, getting very hydrated every day, eating well, and kind of fought my way back to what was really important in life. And so this was, one of those things where your mess becomes your message. So
Say that again.
The mess becomes your message.
Oh, I like that.
It might be Tony Robbins, I'm not sure. But the mess becomes your message. And it's amazing that whole mess that I just thought, how do I get out of this? How do I do this? Gave me real clarity and a chance to step back and say, what's really important in my life? And what's really important in my life was studying space weather, the stuff that's behind me, and mentoring women in STEM. And so I've now become super focused on those are the exact things that I'm going to do. So, it's very now easy to say no to things. I mean, well, it's still not easy. I am a recovering yes addict, but, but it's getting easier to be like, does it fit in these two categories? Okay, no, I'm sorry. Like the answer is no. So through that kind of mess and having to take time away and a step away, I was really able to find myself again and to find what I was really truly passionate about. And actually we'll be starting a rotation at a different location in December, in a job that's truly focused just on this. And so it was great. I also enjoyed that when I was very public about this, I did not, I explained to everyone I was burnt out. This is what's happening. When I said this to this very male dominated fields, I got an amazing amount of men who asked me, how do I do this? Because I feel this too, but I don't know how to get out of it.
Wow.
And so, there many, many people kept coming to me, of all age ranges. And, that felt very validating. And as I've said, it's private, but not personal. So, obviously, it's personal, not private. Sorry, that's backwards. Personal, not private. So, I'm more than willing to talk about it with others, and I think that is helping others kind of recognize it and recognize the culture and help and start making changes in helping everybody perform better at work.
Beautiful. And I love, if you could just tell, and then Susan wants to comment. Mm-hmm. There was something you told me that you knew something was wrong when you couldn't even hear.
Right. I couldn't even hear the radio or the TV. If the news was on, it was like nails on a chalkboard to me. So I just had to stop. I just knew that it was so bad that I had to, when I can't tune out and listen to TV for a while, there was something just very wrong.
That's when you knew it was bad. And yeah. I'm looking, one of these books behind me is, here it is. You heard of this book?
Women's Burnout? No, I haven't. I should read that.
It's called Women's Burnout by Herb Freudenberger. He's actually the one who coined the term 40 years ago. And fun fact, he's my cousin.
Oh, what cool.
Well, so I knew about burnout before I knew what work was. So Susan, you wanted to share. Thank you, Kelly, for sharing that.
I wanted to ask, first of all, I don't know the rules. When a little green box is around, it means you're on camera. Is that?
That means you're talking.
Oh, amazing. Okay. So I wanted to ask Kelly the really most important thing since she's in this world. Is that asteroid going to come and kill us November 2?
No, probably not.
Okay, you promise?
Probably not. I promise. Okay. We are sampling an asteroid tomorrow. So NASA is getting up close to an asteroid tomorrow, I think tomorrow afternoon.
Neil deGrasse seems to think it is, though.
Well, I don't know. I haven't seen any telegrams telling us that it's the end. So
To leave, okay.
Did you say telegram?
telegram?
Yes. The Pony Express will
Pony
be
Express,
coming to
yeah.
say
That'll
go.
be next. So Janice, you have a really interesting story, how you took your challenge and made it your life's work. Are you willing to talk about that?
Yes, I mean, but can't say I did it with this intentional plan. For me, it was very organic. It was when my daughter was diagnosed with a hearing loss, it was more, once I got her situated with her hearing aids in school, it was more, how does our family function? And when she was diagnosed, the doctor, 2 seconds after diagnosing her, said there were special schools for her. And we lived in Manhattan's Upper East Side, and my idea of special schools was a girls' school where she went on the Upper East Side, and that wasn't what the doctor had in mind. And so you can't live in Manhattan and not go to the theater, to the museums, and all cultural events. And we couldn't do that because Ariel couldn't hear everything. So I started fixing things very selfishly because I wanted to continue my life the way it was, and I was unwilling to suddenly live somebody else's version of my life. So when I started fixing hearing access, it wasn't like I had this plan and okay, we're going to start here and then we'll go to here. No, it was more like, okay, this is the problem of where we want to go this weekend. I'll contact that place. Then the next week I'll contact. And then I realized, okay, this is going to take longer. I better start mapping this out of places I want to go and move beyond the kiddie programs because this takes really much longer. And there was a point where I was like, okay, I can't go to another circus where it's silent again, probably for the rest of my entire life. Like I think I have circused out indefinitely, but I started like thinking, okay, if she's this age and it takes this many years, then I better start working ahead. Like the taxi project took me 9 years to implement from start to finish. And so once I started realizing how long the projects, I started planning it out in advance and then started thinking about her time, long term. But then there was a certain point where I guess you would say it's like Malcolm Gladwell said, like the tipping point, where you suddenly realize, okay, this is more than what just our family. It's starting to have an impact. I'm starting to get appointed to all these different federal, state, and city appointments. And in the beginning, you just think, oh, well, you just get lucky. You get an appointment. But then when there's enough of them and you keep getting called and, everybody else here started out with a plan. I never had a plan. I was just kind of like muddling through.
Most people don't get appointed to federal committees. I don't know about you. I've never been appointed to a federal committee. I don't know about the rest of you, but and you've been on multiple. So, it started with trying to help your daughter, but it really went across the entire country and actually the world as you've tried to hit it. So it wasn't a question of if you would get access, it's how and when, and that's what you focused on.
Well, and now I say I'm planning for it used to be about my daughter. Now I say I'm planning for my future because like, as I get older, I'm like, oh, I better get this fixed because I am not putting up with the nonsense that other people who are older adults seem to think is acceptable. But it did. So I moved and it turned out one of my, two of my strengths, organization and connecting dots, helped me with that. And so, in fact, it was just thinking, communicating with Delta, and they're now like trying to research how many airports hearing access is around the world in their airports, because I wanted to find out. But so we started working projects, and the projects for hearing access did have an impact. But I've always done it because, like you said, I love this more than anything, and I've never taken a salary for my work because I just love what I do. It's just so personally fulfilling to me that as long as I can figure things out, it works out. And I just do think if you put out good in the world, it comes back to you.
I agree with you on that. And high achievers, they find their passion. And I've always said they would do it for free if they could, right? You actually did do it for free, but if you can get a salary, all the better.
Yeah, that one seems like basically impossible. People think the access should be provided for free. They don't think they should have to pay anyone for it.
Well, that's a topic for an episode at another time.
Yes.
Susan Silver, I'm hoping that you can just give us a glimmer with whatever you're comfortable with, because you were one of the first female comedic writers in Hollywood. What was that like? What were some of the challenges and how did you overcome them?
Well, first I have to say a disclaimer. I don't mind being an achiever, which is fine, but I don't like being called an elite. So I'm going to remove myself from that.
That's my term.
I'm a medium achiever. How's that?
It's not okay. I'll tell you why. Because every high achiever tells me that they're not a high achiever.
Really?
Yes, well, I had a conversation with someone and he won the Nobel.
Oh, well, I was going to say, if I won the Nobel Prize, I would say I am, but
no, I wanted to quote him for a Forbes piece and he said, but I'm not a high achiever. And I said, but you won the Nobel. I think you're eligible.
That's immodest to the point of ridiculous, but okay. I can't say also that I was a Rhodes Scholar because I didn't go to Rhodes College or wherever that lady is pretending to go to, never mind. When I started out, when I was a little kid, I always knew I wanted to write and I didn't know why or how, but I just did. And I was an only child and I was very overprotected. And I talk about this in my book. I wasn't allowed to cross the street until I was 12. So when it was time to go to college, I wanted to go to California because showbiz was there and I couldn't go from Milwaukee there. So I escaped to Northwestern was my first escape. And I was in a show there called WAMU, which is the very famous college show. And I was a showgirl, but I also wrote a sketch. And so for the first time, I'd been funny my whole life, mostly to entertain myself because I get bored very easily. So I wrote a sketch and for the first time I heard laughter from an audience. I said, this is what I want to do. I want to write comedy and I'm going to get out to California. So I escaped and went to UCLA and I was in film school and Francis Ford Coppola was my graduate teacher. And I won an award from the Writers Guild. I was the youngest person at the time to win for a screenplay that I did for his class. And that introduced me to real people. And there was a woman named Isabel Leonard, who was a very famous writer. And she kind of encouraged me. But I couldn't get a job because I didn't have shorthand and typing. Kids, look that up, Google shorthand. It's, I didn't have that because I didn't want to be a secretary. And back in the day, you had to be a secretary. So I had to go after college and graduate school and take a speed writing class to get a job. And I got a speed writing certificate and I couldn't read anything I wrote. And I got a job at a TV station and my boss was very old and he couldn't remember what he was dictating. So I would make up the letters and pretend I had written them with speed writing. And then I progressed little by little, little by little. And I was doing casting for Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, Google that, old show. And I wanted to be a writer. And my boss said, you can't be a writer because they're all men and they're in an apartment and they're wearing undershirts and they want to fart. And I said, well, they can fart in front of me. And he said, no, they don't want to fart in front of you. So I told that to the New York Times last year. They did an article on because I was a girl, what stopped me. So I said, farting stopped me. I thought they wouldn't say it in the New York Times, but they did. Anyway, and while I was there, I met a girl named Iris Rayner Dart, who later went on to write Beaches, and she was managed by Gary Marshall, who the late, great Gary Marshall was my best friend, my mentor, my manager. And we did a Love American Style. And then I said to him, I just saw this show, Mary Tyler Moore. I can do this. He said, well, you've never written by yourself. And I said, well, I know, but I can do it because I grew up in Milwaukee. She grew up in Minneapolis. I worked at a small TV station in California. She did too. Please, please get me in there. So because he was Gary Marshall, they listened to him and they saw me and I pitched my stories from my own life because back in the day, I didn't know you were allowed to make things up. So I only went in with stories from my own life. And they only had one other woman there, Treva Silverman. And they thought I was really smart because I had all these new inventive stories, which any woman, any one of you could have pitched, but they hadn't heard them before. And so I started on top. And it was really easy. I didn't have the challenges that one would think because that was the best show on television. And after that, it was really easy in my career. And I often think that had I had challenges, I wouldn't have made it because I really give up easily. So I'm not, I'm not as, shall we say, high achieving elite as you might think. And I was very fortunate. I had a lot of luck.
You talk like all the other high achievers. It was the team that helped them, right?
Well, you have to have someone who believes in you. And back in the day, it usually was a guy because they were there, but I had a lot of support. And also it's timing. In comedy, timing is everything. In life, timing is everything. It was the beginning of the women's movement. So I was living that life that all of us were trying to live, having a career, being married, and it all kind of helped each other. The feminist movement helped Mary Tyler Moore, and Mary Tyler Moore show helped the feminist movement. And the greatest thing about it is I've been living off that credit for what, 40 years or something. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's so important to younger people today too. And when I do a lot of teaching or lecturing, so many young women come up and say how much that show meant to them. So it's really the luckiest credit. It just lives forever.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Liana, you've had a bumpy road.
Oh, yeah, I have. It's really interesting because thank you for asking that. I'm going to start with my granddaughter just turned 15. And what that's bringing up in my life is that I was 15 when I got engaged to her grandfather. And so the concept that I look at my granddaughter, who's this beautiful, delicate young woman, just becoming a young woman, and I put my own face next to hers and I go, I wanted to get out, but unlike Susan, I didn't go to college or run away to go to college. I ran away, and the only way for me out was to get married. There was no other way for a Persian Jewish girl raised in Germany to continue. I mean, I was in ninth grade. I got married in 10th grade at 16. And for me, that was, okay, I'm going to get married. And I wasn't even aware that I was going from the fire into the frying pan. It wasn't even part of my consciousness. And what's interesting about that is because I go back and I look at it and I go, what was I thinking? Where was I? Where was my... And it's really interesting because when you say to Susan or to us, we're high achievers, I didn't even see any other way, Ruth. I just saw what I needed to do to get me, the part that was inside of me that I thought I wanted to express as a self-expressed life. I needed to just get it out there. And that's basically been, like Janice says, I didn't really have a plan. I didn't have a plan. What I knew was that I was meant to wake people up. I knew that as a little girl. I knew that when I was 3, 4, I would look at people and I would go, why are they lying to each other? Why are they not telling the truth? I'd look at my parents and go, why are these two people lying to each other? And so I knew as a young girl, but it wasn't ever, oh, I have a plan and I'm going to get big. And it was just survival. A lot of who I am and the pieces that came together came because it was needed and nobody was doing it. It was needed and it wasn't there for me to go and ask someone for help. I had a motto until about a couple of years. So I'm 61. Until I turned 60, I had a motto, and that was, if it's to be, it's up to me. And that's been like the proponent in my life. If it's to be, it's up to me. The Course in Miracles has a beautiful statement. It says, anything that's missing in any situation is something that I'm not bringing. And that's basically who I've been my whole life. If it wasn't there, I was going to create it. I didn't care what other people were doing. And so it might just be a tiny myopic view. Now I look at it and I look at it from a different view and I go, it was myopic, yet it gave me so much strength. I didn't look to the outside for support. I knew that I had something inside of me that could help me and propel me and keep me going. And that's just a blessing. I don't know where that came from, Ruth. Maybe it came from my parents or my grandparents or my history, but wherever it came from, I am just so unbelievably grateful. And now I'm in a place where I want I want to have access to the language of how you can create that in yourself, which is the path that I'm on, teaching younger people. And so I just created something very brand new out of the blue. It's called the emotional eloquence, because I believe that we are not equipped as a people to describe our emotions in a way that's powerful. So eloquence precedes emotional intelligence. This is another thing that came out of 40 years of, you know, walking in the dark or testing things out. And it's amazing. It gives you thick skin. You know, it gave me a lot of thick skin. And it's a powerful place to be when you get to a place where you go, you know what, I'm just going to try this. It doesn't matter if someone's with me or not. It's a very empowering place to be, and freeing. And if there's anything I can say, is like, if you step into the unknown and there's no one there who has your back, or you think no one's got your back, all the people who admire you and love you and care about you, they're going to come flooding out of the woodwork, and they're going to go, oh my God, that's amazing. Keep going. So if you're out there and you're listening to this and you have an idea, just go for it. Just go for it.
So high achievers, and I'm still going to say elite high achievers, and Susan Silver, you're still in that pool. They fear not trying more than they fear failing.
That's true.
Fear not trying more than they fear failing.
Yeah, I totally feel that.
Right? Because failure is part of the learning process.
There's, in my book, there's no failure. There's like, just do it and you're going to find out. And I have a very strong connection to embodiment. So for me, learning is not in my brain. This is knowledge, and knowledge that lives in the muscle in my book is wisdom. So I can know something in my head, yet if I can't translate it or make it accessible to someone else, then I haven't completed the connection of the blessing of the wisdom. So if I'm sitting up on a hill and I'm by myself, well, that's great, but I'm not furthering the consciousness of the universe. My only job is to embody it and to be able to connect it to someone else. Because when I give it away, then it's like, okay, cool, it just showed up over there. That's why we're all here, you know?
Right.
Show up. You said German and Persian. I was a little confused.
My parents are Persian Jews, and I was born in Germany and raised all over Europe.
Oh, okay.
Until I came here in 1985.
Wow, you have no accent at all.
But I can put one on. I
No,
like
we
you
all
to
can,
understand.
but
It's
we
no
wouldn't.
problem. Thank you.
Susie, can I ask you about your work? So a lot of us have seen Susie's TED Talk, and she's actually taught us a lot about photography. And I think if ever there was a challenge every single minute of every single day, because what I remember from Susie's talk is get the good light, get the good light. But what if it's a torrential downpour, or it's overcast, or you don't have the good light, or you have this challenge every time you whip out your camera? How do you deal with that?
Well, they say when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. And in my life, you were talking a little bit about origin stories. I came from a very difficult background with a rageaholic father and a very strong mother. And I wasn't able to go off to the Camp Blue Star and what everybody else was doing. So I learned to be creative and independent. And I've always just been a believer that anything is possible. So if I'm going out to photograph, no matter what the situation is, if you're on assignment, you have to come back with a good picture. You can't, they say you can't publish a mistake, I believe they call it. So you just go out and try to figure out, how can I make this happen and make it the very, very best? And one of the things, I just did a talk for the Mentor Project, and it'll go online shortly. And I talked about luck is when preparation and opportunity meet. So you know as much as you can about the subject, and you go out knowing you have in photography, it's important to have the right equipment. So I would very carefully plan what to bring for whatever option I might need. And then you just help yourself get lucky. A lot of it is talking with people. For example, one of my photographs was in India, and India is in, Taj Mahal is one of the most photographed buildings in the world. So how do you make a photograph that's better? And I talked to a lot of people, I did a lot of research, I looked at a lot of photos, and I found out that if I went up to the Red Fort, that I would have a better chance of getting lucky. And I got lucky with a really beautiful sunrise. So you just really have to kind of, first of all, you have to believe in yourself and know that you can come back with something. And you have to be curious and excited in the challenge of being able to make something come out from something that didn't look so promising. And I think that's a big part of it. And also, I really listen to mentors, and they help give you courage. They help give you, they help save you time. There's, I really listen a lot. And in photography, I look at a lot of photographs. And I think curiosity is one of the big keys also. It really helps.
I love it. And I've seen that picture that you're talking about. It is gorgeous. It is absolutely stunning. Dr. Susan Bernstone, you live and breathe this every single day in your work, every day. What can you share with us?
Well, it's so fascinating, Ruth. I think you're asking great questions, and I have so much feedback to give. So the first thing is that, when Kelly left, and let's see who else left. A couple of people not on here, but I wanted to comment on some of the things that have already.
She's here.
Right. And also, Ruth, to you, what was coming to mind was this whole notion of burnout. And there's people have been talking recently about what burnout is, even more so. And there's this concept about we get stuck when we don't go through an emotional process, that we get stuck in the emotional process. And what's happening is right now, actually, I'm excited to announce that I've actually started a group for high achievers that are actually stuck in their personal lives. Because sometimes what happens, and what I found, is that a lot of people who we would consider elite high achievers professionally, personally, and emotionally, they look on the outside like they have everything. And on the inside, they feel like a complete mess. And Kelly, what you talked about in terms of feeling completely just burnt out, and the process that you went through, all I can think about was that you allowed yourself to actually feel your feelings and be with yourself. And I didn't know your story before, and I can't wait to talk to you more about it. I'm really excited. And Ruth, you too, in terms of the loss, and what I have found. First of all, I don't consider myself either an elite high achiever at all, even a high achiever. But that said, I think there's also this notion of who we compare ourselves to, right? So the guy who won the Nobel Prize, maybe he's comparing himself to somebody who won a Nobel Prize and a something else. People who win Emmys, but if they didn't get an Emmy and a Grammy, then what's defining success? And when I think about my own journey, where I feel successful is when I compare myself to where I came from. So my bump in the road was actually, and I've seen this from a lot of people too, it's the way that we think about ourselves and those voices in our heads. And I came from a very financially poor family, and lots of different struggles, both emotionally as well as financially. I was the first college graduate in my family. So I didn't have those role models. And but yet I just always knew that I wanted to do certain things. And so it's interesting because when I go back and I'm friends with a lot of people that I grew up with, and in different areas, and a lot of people are like, wow, look at all you've done. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, well, I didn't do enough. But it's all relative, right? So I didn't have those connections. When I see there are groups of people that have a lot of connections. And one of the things, just to give a plug for the Mentor Project, is because of what the Mentor Project provides, actually. And I actually wish I had the Mentor Project when I was younger. All these mentors to mentor people when they don't have those connections in the fields, all those role models. So I think, a couple of things that I want to underscore, because I've had other challenges along the way. And, Liana, when you talked about, I think it was Liana and Ruth, maybe it was Ruth, one of you had mentioned that with high achievers, the fear of not trying is worse than the fear of failing. As I talked about being a television talk show host, I've been a therapist in the field of behavioral health, mental health for many, many years. But I always had this dream that I wanted to be a television talk show host. And when I got to, I was almost 50, I was 49. And I said to myself, oh my goodness, if not now, when? And what's really important to me? And what will I regret? Like, God forbid I was on my deathbed right now. What's the thing in life that I would regret? And it was not to be a television talk show host. And so I'm like, oh my goodness, I've got to go and do that. So I did it myself. I went, I took a couple classes, I got volunteers, and I put on a production and became a producer and host of a television talk show all myself, with, I won't recommend this for others to do, but with volunteer resources, not with NBC behind me, just through public access. And I did it. But it's what you said. It was like the fear of not trying was so worse than I didn't care if I failed. In fact,
what does failure look like, though? What's the worst that would happen?
And it was very funny because the first taping I did, it was very emotional, and everybody that was there it was very emotional. And because I finally did this thing I wanted to do, I had, four people come. I taped 4 shows in one day because they said your guests aren't going to show. My guests showed. And it was so great. And afterwards it was like, oh my goodness, I did it. I never have to do this again. It's done. I was done. And everyone came up to me and said, you're done? That was fantastic. Like, you're just getting started now. And I was like, really? And so it was amazing. And so I'm having fun with it. We'll see, who knows where it's going to go. But you're right. What is failure? It was just the doing. And so I would say, whatever you want to do, just go out and get out of your own way. I had to do that. I had to get out of I'm still working on getting out of my own way.
Be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Exactly. Susan?
You're muted.
You're muted.
Susan, you're muted.
Okay.
There we go.
I just want to say I do goof around a lot, but I do want to say one serious thing apropos of what you just said. Aside from the fun stuff and the showbiz and the sex in my book, I realize there are 3 R's in life. The first one is relationships. That's pivotal. That's the most important thing. The second thing is reinvention. After 20 years of showbiz, I took a year off. I thought, what do I want to do? I want to be involved with Israel, with Holocaust things. I went a whole other way. Okay. The third thing is resilience. I didn't think I had any. I wasn't tested early on, maybe, but as life went on and I had illness and death of my parents and other things and new careers, etc., you find out you can just do it. It's just what you said, just do it. Now, on my deathbed, I would like to be more than a television host, but that's another story. We'll talk about it later.
I love it. Thank you. Monica, we haven't heard from you yet. And then Bruce, I want to know about the biggest challenge that you've had to overcome. Monica, what about you? Have you had a challenge that you've had to overcome, and how'd you go about it?
I've had many challenges. And so I gave a TED talk about using analytics to address refugee problems. When my father was a refugee, there were 1 million refugees in the world. And now we have tens of millions of refugees. And I went to the State Department, it was like 2012. And I talked to them. They said, how can we use analytics to expand the diplomatic mission with limited resources? And so I came up with this concept and I refined it over the day with all of the people there. And then I ended up talking to the person who had sponsored the conference. And I said, okay, so you invited all of these people to come and talk about this thing. Here's my proposal. And he said, yeah, that's what we want to do. But you need to have, this is like complete, this is such a big change. This is so revolutionary that you would need to have the Secretary of State behind this. You would need to have very, very high level people saying this is going to be one of the big things that I do in my tenure. It's that big of a change. And there are going to be a lot of people who are going to be thinking, I don't know where my place is in that. And they'll be afraid of it. And then you have to deal with that. And then I got to do a TED talk on it, and I was starting to talk to the right people. And then this election in 2016, the way that went, and the Obama administration recognized vulnerable people on the planet as a national security concern. And then for the last 4 years, that has not been the case, right? And I've been trying to do these using technology to do better things, and none of that was going to happen with the federal government, right? And so I went and I did some other things, and I always thought I want to get back to these things. And then a few months ago, I did something nice for somebody, and she introduced me to some people, and then something led to another thing that led to another thing. And now I am working on an initiative to bring ventilators to Africa. And we're talking to corporations. Some of them have tax incentives right now, and they, but we're talking about them, and some of them just want to do the right thing. And so we have got the private sector, and we've got public-private sector relationships outside of channels that normally are doing these things that ultimately are better for our country to be doing. And we're doing them in a different way.
Well,
So,
remember how I started saying is that high achievers, it's not a question of if, it's a question if they'll get over that barrier, it's how and when. So they focus on how and when. And that sounds like what you did with that pivot.
we're working on it, and it's a very exciting place to be.
That's great. Bruce Wiley.
Yeah, so
Pick one. Pick a challenge.
so I grew up with my name, and I basically it was interesting growing up because a day would not go by without some kind of comment about my name, and I actually got in a lot of fights when I was little because people were like, "I want to beat up Bruce Lee," and fortunately I was fortunately bigger than other kids, so I usually end up winning the fights. And so it's interesting in some ways. It sort of set the stage. I think people many times would have a like an initial impression of me, whether it's through my name or through other things, et cetera. And many times that impression didn't really actually match who I was. So I think there were many situations in which I pivoted throughout my life where people would tell me that I can't do something, or it's not right that I should do something. So I remember early on, I grew up in a very, very non-verse town. And I remember that, I like to play sports, and people were telling me that, people that look like you don't play sports. People would tell me that frequently. But I like to play sports, and I didn't want to do martial arts. So I sort of persisted with that. And I found in doing that early on, and I ran into situations that all the time, even when I initially played sports, I got a lot of heckling and things like that. And, people telling me, when I played soccer, they say, "Oh, be careful. They're going to kung fu. He's going to kung fu you," and things like that. I just got lots of stuff like that. But it made me realize that when people don't know you. So when they don't know you and they put up barriers and they say, you can't do something, you aren't able to do this, it actually, in the long run, helps you, I think, become more capable, right? Because you're in a situation where people are not necessarily helping you. So you have to actually figure it out on your own. There's no one says, okay, here's the roadmap. This is what you're supposed to do. And then I think you actually become a little more creative. So you start hitting situations where you're like, okay, there's no book, there's no playbook. So I'm not going to wait for a playbook. I'm just going to figure it out. And And, you know, as a result, you may make mistakes and you may take wrong turns and things like that. But while you're doing that, you're sort of owning your path, because you know, if you try to figure it out a certain way and then it didn't work out, at least you know why it didn't work out, as opposed to a situation where, you know, it's already set there and then you don't really know how the table was set. So I think that sort of has been, you know, one of my friends once said, one of my purposes in life is to experience very weird things and then write about them. So so I've, you know, just because my life has been about as straight as noodles or fettuccine,
Cooked.
depending on what you're talking about. Yes, cooked fettuccine, cooked noodles, cooked mac and cheese. It's turned left and right. So therefore, you know, I've always been in situations where it's something new. And then I've seen some very weird situations. And then my friend said, yeah, that's one of my purposes in life. And in many ways, that's almost like saying, well, you know, you've got to like laugh about it. And you've also got to, you know, that can feed creativity. You can write about it because it's a weird situation.
That's right. And I think that's going to be our topic for next week. When high achievers, someone tells them no, they hear not yet. So I want to hear about those stories of when someone told you no, you heard not yet. And I'll let you in a little secret. I found out recently that my 8th grade teacher told my mother I was almost average. So I recently found that out.
Oh
anyway,
my God, I hear you. My parents always heard your daughter is stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like,
so you know, I am laughing now, but so next week
I was told that I don't have a creative bone in my body.
I will say that humor is the most important, really for me, the most important thing. Even though life has been really lucky and wonderful, I almost died twice. Both my parents, I'm an only child. I had to take care of them as they passed. So, you know, I've had a divorce, other things, but the main thing that gets me through is laughing. And one of the things I write about is when I was in the hospital, all the funny things that I could do to amuse myself. That's the way I got through. So humor, it's so important. And if you're not funny, find a funny friend.
So I think we'll keep you around.
Susan, you and I need to talk.
Because you're not funny.
We both have been through death. We both have been on.
Everybody has.
Physically, yeah. There, Monica, another one.
Yeah, I have some funny stories about when I had Lyme disease and I was in the hospital, but that's for another time. But I was so lucky. I got to be friends with Nancy Grace Roman, who was the first woman chief scientist at NASA. And
she was a barrel of laughs. What?
One of the most wonderful things that she said was, "I'm so glad I never listened to the many people who told me a woman could not be an astronomer." Because she heard that all the time. You know, this is a woman, she'd be close to 100 now, you know.
Kelly didn't listen to that.
I will tell you a funny story. So my daughter, who always had people telling her that she could not, she's going to kill me for this. Thank God she's not on this show, but I'm going to sell it.
It's being recorded on,
I know, but
on YouTube.
She is going to kill me. So she was always told that one teacher once told her that she'll never be able to really do math, that she was just incapable. And when she took her math SAT 2, she got an 800. And so I really wanted to go back to that teacher and just say, you know, don't ever tell a child you can't do something. I mean, it was just absolutely crazy. It was just meant that person was an incompetent teacher. It wasn't that my child was incompetent. I mean, it was the teacher, and it's just really funny. And then there's the funny story, like where, you know, you just have life, you don't know where it's going to take you, and you just go through it.
That's right.
I had the lowest math boards ever to go to Northwestern, 444. So maybe she was thinking of me. I'm not proud of it.
On that funny note, we are going to wrap up. We're going to talk about when no means not yet next week when you join us. We'll be back thanks to the Mentor Project. And I would like all of our high achievers, if people want to look you up and hear more about your stories of how you overcame challenges and what you're doing now, tell everyone where they can find you. Janice.
So I have two websites, janicelyntz.com, which is my advocacy site, and my professional consulting site is hearingaccess.com.
Thank
and
you.
Thank you for having me.
Always. Thank you for coming back. Bruce.
So if you Google Bruce Y. Lee and ignore anything that says martial arts, I also have brucewiley.com, or you can Google Bruce Y. Lee Forbes to see my writing.
Thank you. Liana.
You can Google Liana Shauli. There are not too many Liana Shaulis. And you can also reach me and get a beautiful gift at betheoffer.com. I believe that you can be the offer, don't make the offer. Betheoffer.com.
Love it. Thank you. Dr. Kelly.
You can reach me at kellycorrick.com or Google me. I'm the only one of two Kelly Corricks in the world. So I'm the astrophysicist, not the insurance person.
Susie Katz.
So you can find most of what I've been doing recently at photowings.org, photowings.org. And I made several videos myself there. We have extensive content. And also, like I said, I just made a video which will be going up in the Mentor Project shortly. And for my own personal work, you can go to susankatzphotography.com.
Thank you. Will we see that picture of the Taj Mahal?
Yes, it's in there.
Thank you. Monica.
Monica at blue-mill.com. I am also, you have the spelling of my name, which is not intuitive unless you speak German, but it's on the screen, and Monica at blue-mill.com.
Thank you. Dr. Susan.
You can get to me at Dr. Susan Bernstone, and my website is in the middle of being revised, but I think you can still reach me there, or you can email me at Dr. Susan Bernstone without the hyphen at gmail.com, or you can get to me on the Mentor Project. And if you want to learn more about my shows, you can Google Your Voice with Dr. Susan. There's lots of different ways, and I'm also, my shows for the Mentor Project are on there as well. And if you're interested in learning more about the group that I'm just starting, a community for high achievers that are experiencing being stuck, please reach out to me directly.
Thank you. Susan.
My website is hotpantsinhollywood.com. A lot about me in the book and my life. And then I have a radio commentary on NPR called Susan Says. It's WHDD Robin Hood Radio. It's once a week. I do a lot of politics, so be careful. I do media, culture, and things that piss me off, which is called Oh, Come On.
I love that. Oh my goodness. I told you guys we'd laugh. And I'm Dr. Ruth Gotian, and I can be found at ruthgotian.com and all the social media channels. It is just my name, Ruth Gotian. I too write for Forbes. You could just look up my name, and Psychology Today, where there will be an article coming out this week in Psych Today about imposter syndrome that I know we all face. So that's where you can find us. And thank you to Debbie Heiser and the Mentor Project for once again hosting us and holding our spot while I was coming back to all of you. And thanks to all of these incredible high achievers who came back, saved their Monday nights on their calendar, didn't decide to do something else. Thank you so much for coming back and joining me. And we'll see you all next week. Bye.